Hi everyone, it's Dr. Nitch. You haven't seen me in a little bit, so here I am. We are going to work on taking apart a narrative essay, because that's mostly what you're going to be doing for your first essay. It's going to be a little different than what you see with the essay we're going to take apart. And in that, the essay that we're going to take apart doesn't respond to a particular idea or quote from somebody else, but that's okay. What I'll make clear is how the pieces that I'm going to call reflective are the places where you are going to talk about what you think regarding Pollen's idea about food as expressing social and ecological relationships, or I'm sorry, environmental relationships. So I want to jump right in to the essay. Make myself go away. I'm going to read it to you, which might seem weird, but it's helpful. It's not long, and it's helpful to sort of hear narrative essays, I think, because they're just full of really wonderful detail and tone, and you can really only hear that by reading it out loud or slowing down so that you're noticing the voice in your head as you read. So this is called Familiar Dish, Familiar Friend, and this is by Sveta Vikram. As you're going to learn, she is from India. And this narrative essay was written in the New York Times Magazine, and it was asking writers to think about food that is important to their family. So there's a bit of the idea of social relationship here, especially because one of the characters, Gulshan, is not actually a blood relation. She is an employee of the family, but we'll get there. So I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to jump into the presentation, and we'll sort of jump back and forth between the presentation and the text and the article. So Gulshan showed up in our lives by chance. She was old, searching for work. Mom wasn't looking to hire anyone. And even if she had been, Gulshan was Muslim and my family Hindu. When I was growing up, most families in India hired help within their own religion unless they could afford English-speaking Catholic nannies. But there was something about Gulshan. True to her name, which means garden in Hindi, she created a kind of refuge around her. Before we knew it, she was in our kitchen making Mom's favorite dessert, pirni, a bit like a rice pudding. Before returning to India, and I might be saying that wrong, by the way, if somebody knows, please correct me. Before returning to India, my parents had lived in Libya, where my father was the head of a steel manufacturing plant. Because the country was not very stable, they sent us to boarding school in the foothills of the Himalayas, which we continued to attend. My mother, something of an introvert, spent much of her time at home. Gulshan was her constant companion, listening to her stories while she made mango pickles or dusted or helped my mother organize dinner parties. Gulshan had no family, and my mother, in a sense, adopted her. She would buy her saris and small presents during Eid and Diwali. Whenever I came home to Patna from school and later from college, there was Gulshan. There was Gulshan. She never forgot to make my favorite dish, aloo, I'm not going to say it right properly, burjia, I think, spicy potatoes cooked in mustard oil. I never forgot to touch her feet in a sign of respect that was usually reserved for older relatives. In India, there was often a certain distance between employers and their household help, but I couldn't maintain this divide with Gulshan. I would hug her tight. She was so petite, I would even try to lift her up. This took her a little getting used to. The first time, discomfited by my actions, she whispered and spat. I nudged her. Did you just cuss? Oh, my baby, how can you say that? Gulshan cupped my face in her hands. I was asking Allah to always bless you. The house lights up when you're around. Don't go back. We had a favorite corner in my parents' house where I would sit cross-legged on the floor. Gulshan would sit on a chair. She would oil my hair just as my mother did and murmur, always be happy, my baby. May Allah always bless you. When I married in the late 90s, Gulshan worried that I would start to behave like a traditional Indian woman. So the day after my marriage, when my husband and I visited my family, I changed out of my sari into old tattered shorts and sat on Gulshan's lap. She cried, my baby, I'm so happy you are the same. After I moved to New York, I spoke frequently with Gulshan by phone when she was at my parents'. Slowly, Gulshan started to show up less and less. On one of my trips to Patna, I didn't see her. Is she okay, Mama? I asked. I sent the driver to her home last week, but no one has heard from her, and she doesn't carry a phone, but conversation, someone rang the doorbell. It was Gulshan. Oh, my baby, you are here. Where have you been? My mother asked, sounding both worried and irked. Gulshan explained that she'd had a bad fall. Shouldn't you be resting? I asked as I bowed to touch her feet. I knew you were coming, and I wanted to make you aloo pulgia. How did you know? Gulshan's face brightened. A farishta, an angel, told me. I rolled my eyes. Over the years, Gulshan developed arthritis and was unable to do much work. Out of pride, she wouldn't accept my family's offers of financial assistance, so my parents started to make up chores that she could do. My mother would give Gulshan her old saris and pack leftovers for her. 2 years ago, my mother died suddenly and unexpectedly. When I returned to Patna a few months later, it was strange to be alone in my mother's house. After her death, I turned inward. I found some solace in yoga and gave up sweets and meats. I rarely spoke. One thing stayed the same, my desire to see Gulshan. My father told me that he had sent someone to find her, but she wasn't home. Suddenly the doorbell rang. There was Gulshan. She was holding a bowl in her hands and dressed in one of my mother's old saris. How are you, my baby? She asked. For the first time, she pulled me towards her. I fought my tears as I leaned into her. I brought you some firni. I pushed the bowl away. I no longer eat desserts. The Farishta would like it, Gulshan said, pointing in the direction of Mom's room. I ate an entire bowl. So, this is the narrative essay we're going to take apart. See what's happening. These are just some images. Image of Patna, the town where the family lives. And then this is the dessert that the mother likes so much. It's like a rice pudding. So one of the key pieces of this, as I discussed sort of in narrative in general in the last video, is details really matter. So if the title of this is called Familiar Dish, Familiar Friend, the author needs to establish this idea of familiar, right? So it would be one thing she could just say, Gulshan and my mom were close, because my mom didn't get out much, period. But that doesn't give us a really strong visual or even other sensory experience. Like if you know what mango pickles taste like, that might trigger something for you, even in terms of taste, if you're reading an essay like this. So the use of detail here is really nice. And I just pulled out one paragraph. My mother, something of an introvert, spent much of her time at home. Gulshan was her constant companion, listening to her stories while she made mango pickles or dusted or helped my mother organize dinner parties. Gulshan had no family, and my mother, in a sense, adopted her. She would buy her saris and small presents during Eid and Diwali. So we're getting some very specific details about what Gulshan is doing, right? She's making the pickles, she's dusting, she's helping the mom with the parties, she's listening to the mother's stories, right? We get some more details about Gulshan. She has no family. We get a sense of the mother's love for Gulshan. She's giving her gifts during these two holidays, religious holidays. She's giving her saris, right? Most likely much more expensive than Gulshan can probably afford to buy for herself. So all these nice little details of sari, mango pickle, dusting, listening, no family, all those are really helpful in establishing this idea that Gulshan and her mother are familiar to each other, right? If you even look at the word family is in familiar, right? It's this idea of something that's not just known to you, but you're close with it. So these details really help us see that. So when you're going back over your previous practice, exercise, activity, and maybe adding to it or maybe changing stuff, bringing in lots of nice concrete detail like this. And it's not just random detail. It's not just detail because you think people would like it. It's detail that has to do with kind of the theme of your story. And the theme of this story is this idea of the familiar, right? And linking the food and the friendship. This is sort of the theme. For you guys, the theme is either this idea of the social relationships that are tied to food, the environmental relationships that are tied to food, both of them, right? That food is social, food is environmental. So if you just want to work with the social part of that, because that's all your personal experience allows you to do, then your keyword would be social, and another keyword would be food, right? And so your stories have got to show us how, for you, food is social. And this very specific details have to give us a sense of the social, that people are bonding over something, that people are sharing an experience, that people in the room sort of believe very similar things, right? Maybe it's a dish that you make every year that's been passed down generation and generation to generation, that sort of stuff. So you want those details to be evocative, is the word we use. You want them to really paint a picture, create a smell, fire a taste in somebody's mouth, definitely. But all in the service of proving that your story shows how food is social. So also this food, right, shows up in the beginning because it's the mother's favorite dessert. And then the daughter, even after the mother's death, she eats it, even though she's decided she doesn't want to eat sweets anymore. And her mother, and Gulshan in the end, just to go back to it, is gesturing towards the back of the room. Her mother is the angel, right? When she says, the Farishta would like it. She's pointing in the direction of the mom's room. So Gulshan is claiming to have this continued connection with her mother, right? Even in the afterlife. And she eats it to sort of bond, not just with Gulshan, but also with her mother, right? In that moment. So that even this one dish is really important in this essay. And that might be true for you in your essay. It may be a particular dish. It doesn't have to be something you make, right? The narrator doesn't make this. It may not be something like, maybe something that someone in your family likes, but somehow still that dish brings lots of people together, right? So you don't have to focus on one dish, but it may be helpful to try that. And then there are lots of other anecdotes about food, and some that aren't, but all of these anecdotes help us understand the narrator's relationship with Gulshan. So there's the detail about Gulshan oiling the narrator's hair. Again, this is an image of what that is. This is an image of the dish, the potatoes fried in mustard oil that Gulshan specially makes for the narrator, right? And the narrator picking Gulshan up and hugging her. All of these stories establish their closeness, their familiarity with each other, right? Especially early on, the hugging, the special food. putting on her shorts, right? She oiled my hair, favorite corner, right? All those nice little details that establish this closeness. So especially if your examples about food are about your relationship with certain people, a grandmother, uncle, cousin, sibling, your children, you can include moments that really aren't related to food. That's okay. These could just establish the closeness of you. This kind of oiling of the hair, that's something a mother would do, right? As she says, just as my mother did. So Gulshan is very much acting like the narrator's mother, right? It's kind of standing in for her in this moment, even though the mother's present and the daughter is close to the mother. So if I can add one more. What you want to do, or how you want to think about, how you want to think about your story. I'm having to put in a slide and I can't. Here, it should be here. Oh, I think it's, sorry, it's because I was clicked on that. There we go. Lisa. But I want it to be different. Okay. Sorry, now you're watching. It's very exciting, right? So your narrative essay needs to use details to tell how the keywords of food and social are present. Right? Also, you can include short anecdotes that don't necessarily talk about food, but may be important to establish something social. Might be useful to focus on a special dish if your family, friends, whatever group you're thinking of. So these are the points I take away from this video. And in terms of the structure, you don't have to, in a narrative essay, have a traditional structure. So there's no introduction, right, in a traditional sense. What's here is we learn who this important character was. We learn about the mother a little bit. We learned about who they are. They're well off, but they're not really rich. And then we learn about the mom's favorite dessert. And that Gulshan is already in there cooking it. So what you have instead of an introduction is a title, right? And I am asking you in this essay to refer to Michael Pollan, but I don't want you to get kind of bogged down by that right now. I want you to let yourself tell the stories you want to tell that you feel like make the kind of vague language of that quote clear. And then if you feel like you can weave in, you can say the quote itself at some point. You do that. If it helps you to start that way, start that way. But this is a far less formal essay in terms of it doesn't need an intro. It doesn't necessarily need a thesis, though a thesis can be helpful. It just really needs to be, all the stories need to be related to each other through some topic or theme, and your topic or theme is coming from the quote. So in a way, this essay might be a little easier to write because you're not too worried about intro, thesis, body paragraph, body paragraph, body paragraph, body paragraph, body paragraph, conclusion. Instead, you're kind of letting the stories do the work for you. If you want more of a structure, if you feel like that would make things easier for you, just contact me. And I'll be looking at your work, obviously. But if you, even before you start, or you want to send me something before you post it, feel free to do that. And I will look it over and I'll help you determine whether it's a structure that makes sense. But what's nice about this first essay is you're giving yourself a little leeway, a little freedom to think through the Michael Pollan quote through your own life. So hopefully that clarifies things. If it doesn't, as always, let me know. But